Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to be making a review for the movie One of Them Days, the new rated R comedy that's currently out in theaters starring SZA and Keke Palmer. For the most part, I enjoyed this movie. Let's dive into it.
Modern movie review.
Okay, this was a hard review for me to make because I don't like doing reviews that are insanely short. However, this movie is a comedy, and for the most part, I will just tell you, this movie is funny. I had a really good time with it. I do genuinely think that this is a dumb, fun comedy. There's a lot of stuff that happens throughout this movie that are, like, unrealistic, but at the same time, it's realistic enough that it's, like, entertaining to watch. It doesn't, like, take you out of the movie with how stupid some of the things are, but overall, I did like this movie. I think that in some ways it does kind of feel like a cartoon. Like, there's one specific scene where SZA's character is, like, climbing up on a phone pole and she's trying to get a pair of shoes off of an electric wire, which if you saw my out-of-theater reaction for this video, I teased this scene. I could have had a picture of the actual scene, but I just threw that up there, and I was like, it'll make sense to people who've seen the movie. But overall, I had a really good time with this. I did genuinely enjoy this movie, and I feel like part of the issue that I have with reviewing comedies is I've never seen a comedy that has good plot. Like, for the most part, this comedy is, like, it's pretty straightforward. They need to pay rent by the end of the day. They need to make money. They're going to go out, do ridiculous stuff, trying to make money. And it's entertaining. Like, I do definitely think that some of the obstacles that they face throughout the movie are interesting. I love the concept of, there being a biscuit burglar at the chicken place that they went to, and like the second time he stole the bag, I thought that was so funny. And then they didn't end the joke there. They continued with having the girl who was in the car be like, he is not stealing my biscuits, and running him over. That was great. Like, there's a lot of comedic bits in this movie that I really enjoyed, and I feel like that's something that I particularly like about this movie. They have a different sense of humor a lot throughout this movie, which I think is a very good thing. A lot of times with comedies, there's an issue with, like, okay, it's trying to be funny, so it inherently ends up not being as funny because you can tell a lot of these jokes are written, they have gone through a couple of different writers' rooms, and, like, there's a lot of jokes that just feel very manufactured, whereas there's stuff like that where it's just like, that's just hilarious. Like, that's fantastic. And I feel like there's, like, almost no way you could have done that exact scene and it not worked for me. Like, I think that it's just really well written script. I think that they did a really good job making comedic bits that work. And something that I like about this specifically is, like I said, different senses of humor. I'm not a fan of secondhand embarrassment. I think that anytime that happens in a movie, it makes me just as uncomfortable as the main character. But if you're the kind of person where, like, the main character doing something kind of embarrassing is funny to you, there's some moments in here that are great for that. There's a lot of slapstick comedy, which, like, the scene where she randomly hits somebody with her car, that's very much a big part of this movie. Like, there's a lot of, like, fight sequences and stuff like that where they, like, put it into slow motion and they're like, no, and stuff like that. It works. I think that it's a very high energetic comedy. It's around 90 minutes, which I think is, like, perfect. I feel like a lot of times nowadays movies are trying to make their movies longer and longer because back in 2019 we had multiple movies that were longer than 3 hours make $1 billion, and I think a lot of studios learned the wrong lessons from that. So being able to just quickly go watch this in the movie theater is great. I had a good time with it. I think that the comedy is fantastic. None of these characters are necessarily characters that are going to stick with you very well, but they're characters that are incredibly entertaining to spend that hour and a half with. I think that Keke Palmer's character and SZA's character have a really good connection with each other. I feel like the chemistry there was fantastic, and I definitely think that with a movie like this, where it's like kind of like a buddy cop movie is kind of what they refer to these as, or like a road trip movie, they need to have two characters who are vastly different from each other, but have valid reasons for why they're connected to each other and why they still stick together. And I think that they found a good balance with that. I think that they did an incredible job of making these characters being together make sense, which I really liked. I think that the ticking time clock of this movie was also a really entertaining thing. Like, I think that comedies a lot of times can kind of, like, struggle from, like, the fact that, like, okay, we're just gonna have a really ridiculous plot, whereas this one, it's so straightforward, and they did a great job of amping it up with the editing, because constantly throughout the movie they'll randomly be like, 4 hours until eviction, and then eventually they'll, like, get closer to the eviction, and then something else crazy happens, and then they start a new timer. And, like, I love when the editing is able to be a joke, because whenever, like, the timer is, like, you know, ticking down for, like, their eviction thing, and then something else happens and they're like, oh my god, new timer, and they slap the new timer on the screen, it's hilarious. And it's like, you didn't have to actually have the actors doing something to be funny in that moment, which is something that I always like about comedies, is when you're able to make a joke out of, like, the environment that they're in, or like the editing like that, and just like stuff like that. I also love when comedies have like funny things going on in the background, and they did a good job with this movie as well, because there's a character named Lucky, and he's absolutely hilarious. And there are some sequences where he's not even like the focus of this scene, but he's in it, and it's so funny. Like, he's just like such a small nuddle. I don't know what the word I just said was. He's such a small, subtle character in the movie, and it works for me. I really like that sense of humor. I think that actor did a really good job just bringing another layer of comedy to this. And one of the last things that I think I'm going to say about this movie that I did really enjoy, at the end of this movie, it kind of ends with like one of those early 2000s movies, how they would have a montage, like movies like The Sandlot, where they're like, okay, the movie ends, and then it's like showing you a little slideshow of each of the characters, and it's just like, and this character went on to do that thing, and this character went on to do this thing, and then that character went on to do this thing, and I loved that. I thought that was really great, and I also like the fact that this movie, in some ways, was a rom-com. That was something that kind of surprised me, but Keke Palmer's character does in fact have a love interest, and even though he only has probably maybe 7 minutes of screen time, if that, I do think it is pretty entertaining that throughout the course of the movie, whenever they're at like some of their lowest points, a nice car will drive by and it's like, oh my god, it's that girl it's that guy that Keke Palmer was, attracted to earlier. And I thought that was like a nice subtle thing to add to this movie. Like I said, it's not like a full rom-com because he's not in the movie that much, but I thought that was cute and I really appreciated that. And yeah, overall, I had a good time with this movie. I don't think it's one that's necessarily going to stick with me, but as far as comedies go, you're going to go see it. You're going to laugh. It's going to be entertaining. I think that the music is pretty fantastic because they play Doechii, and Doechii is somebody I've been getting into a lot recently. So I loved that. And yeah, so that's pretty much everything I wanted to say. I have one little last tangent, and I did want to leave this at the end because, like, I'm always scared to say this. I'm always afraid to bring, like, race or anything into that. Every once in a while, when there is a movie where they don't have any white characters, or they only have like one white character, and they're pretty much there just so that they can make fun of the white character, I'm scared that a lot of the comedy isn't going to work for me, because it's like, I'm afraid that the comedy is going to be punching down. And I had a little bit of fear with this movie specifically, because there was like a lot of like scenes early on in the movie where they're just like, we're going to get a white neighbor, and oh my god, no, we can't have a white person living here, and stuff like that. It's not a problem with this movie at all. So if you're anybody who, like me, was like, I don't know if I'm going to like this humor that much, it works for the most part. But like, what's it called? There's movies like the movie You People that came out either last year or the year before that, where it's like really, really like messed up humor, and they like have a lot of like jokes that are like kind of like at the expense of white people. And it's kind of like, we get that the joke is funny, but also when it's 45 minutes of that, it can get to be a lot. So if you're somebody who, like me, was a little bit concerned about that, it's not a problem at all. This movie is fantastic. I think that they only have one joke that's kind of like that, and it's one of those jokes where it's like, it's easy to laugh along to it, because it is kind of, it's like, yeah, you clocked us, you're absolutely right. And yeah, but yeah, overall, I like this movie. I had a good time with it. If I had to give it a final rating on a scale of 1 to 100, I'm giving this one a solid 78. Like I said, this isn't one that's going to stick with me very well, but good comedy all throughout it. And I think that overall, this movie is kind of what I wanted the movie Driveway Dolls that came out last year to be like. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was great. But yeah, that being said, that was it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. I love and appreciate you guys so much for watching. And if you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bow, bow, bow.